Happy Halloween, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the Dan Banchero Show. I'm your host and still a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero. I'm coming to you live from Aptos, California at the Sunset State Beach campgrounds. Me and Miss Molly took a ride out here today for Halloween to get away from all the ghouls and ghosts and all the trouble back in San Mateo County. And she's out back yonder in the tent taking a nap, and I decided I was going to go ahead and come up here and tell you what I came up with this week. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. It's a gorgeous day, a little bit chilly out, but it's all good. This week I want to talk a little bit about Wayne Dyer's Excuses to Begone, followed by Emmett Fox and the Sermon on the Mount. Two great books that have absolutely changed my life and enabled me to really take a look at how my thinking is disordered. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and change up? Let's start with Sermon on the Mount. Basically, in this book, Emmett Fox, he gets into the teachings of Jesus Christ and the Beatitudes, like I mentioned in other episodes before. But in one of the chapters, he gets really into talking about how our thoughts direct our actions and how our actions manifest into the real world and how we do have some control over circumstances. So, for me, this is my first camping trip in 14 years. What the heck took me 14 years to come camping? Well, I'll tell you what. My focus was on trying to raise a child. My focus was on trying to make up restitution for debts that I've owed. Unfortunately, a lot of these debts were due to poor decisions that I made financially, and it cost me money. So my attention was also based on a lot of work, and I was missing out on a lot of life because I was trying to get caught up. My intention was good. However, there was a lot of unbalanced living going on with me. So I was going overboard in certain parts of my life, and there was a lot of fear behind it. If I didn't catch up soon enough, or if I didn't take care of this, I wouldn't be here. And eventually, I tore everything down by the foundation, and I'd have to start over and over and over again. So I wouldn't do certain activities because I thought that I couldn't afford to do these things. I'd build up a little surplus of money and I'd put it towards paying off a debt, and then my personal life would get screwed up because my attention was on what I didn't want rather than what I do want, and then everything would fall apart and there'd be absolutely nothing anyway, and then I'd be starting over and over and over again, like I said. So on page 13, Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox says this. He says, "The outer world, far from being the prison of circumstances that is commonly supposed to be, has actually no character whatsoever of its own, either good or bad. It only has the character that we give to it by our own thinking." Further down the page, he says, "The truth is that the whole of our life's experience is but the outer expression of inner thought, and therefore our lives are just the result of the kind of thoughts we have chosen to hold." So you had to take responsibility there. "And therefore are of our own ordering, and therefore there is just perfect justice in the universe. No suffering for a man's original sin, but the reaping of a harvest that we ourselves have sown. We have free will, but our free will lies in our choice of thought." You know, a lot of words get thrown around and people don't really know the definitions, and for me, one of those words was will. Whenever I'd hear the expression God's will, I thought it would be like, oh, it's in God's hands, I have no control, I have to surrender, everybody's going to do what they want to do. But the truth is that my character can generate certain types of situations and certain types of circumstances to change for the better. So if I'm thinking negatively, if I'm thinking in regards to money out of fear, if I'm being a miser, and I'm not taking advantage of living life because I'm in fear of, I can't afford it. I had to dig a little bit deeper. You see, I was spending money on certain things that I really didn't need. So in the past, I've done these videos on the internet, going out to restaurants, eating pie and eating these dinners and this and that. But a lot of people don't know that I sell food for a living. And a lot of these restaurants are my accounts, and they give me a free meal here and there. So I give them a little plug, out of appreciation. But in the past, I have spent too much money on food. So once I was able to identify that, I'm going out just a little bit too much here, and stop applying so much of my thoughts into these tasty dishes that I consume. I'm able to use that money for more experiences. Many of you know that 2018 has been a very prosperous year for me. I've had a lot of fun, man. I've had a lot of great times with a lot of close friends. I made some new friends, and we're just living life. We're just doing our thing. And, in order for me to continue to experience those things, I got to be frugal in other areas. So rather than me saying that I don't have enough, all I had to do was shift my thinking on where I really want my money to go to. Because I was frivolously spending money on things that were totally unnecessary. Many of you know in the late 90s and early 2000s, I'd have a few pops, bang a couple rails, and I'd be on the internet with the online shopping. And I'm getting these boxes and all this ridiculous stuff between the engraved championship belts to the personalized jerseys to the gaudy paisley shirts that I wear to pornographic DVDs and sex toys. All the silly stuff that was totally unnecessary. Well, I sort of get a pass back then. I understand why I was so broke. It's because I was in an alcoholic psychosis and my thinking was distorted. Now, some years later, I'm able to identify with what I really do want, and I can make smarter decisions. So like in the past year, I've enjoyed having a little more freedom with work. So one of the things I would never spend money on is shoes. I don't know why. It was just like I'm always working. There's no point in me buying a bunch of fancy shoes. Now it's like I got the Peter Pan complex. I got a couple pairs of KDs. I got a couple pairs of LeBrons. I have money to buy these things now because they're things that I do want. I don't have to have an abundance of them, but I have enough to get by and enjoy some shoes. Before, I could have bought the same shoes, but I wasn't doing it because I was so enthralled with spending money elsewhere. I'm like, well, where the heck's all my money going? Well, now the balance is there, and I'm able to identify these things. But once I was able to identify these thoughts of fear and lack in my life, I can expand and have some balance and spread my money out and enjoy life thoroughly. So, will, the mental or physical power by which a person decides and initiates action. Okay, so now I understand what will is. Well, in the past, my will has sucked. I don't know if any of you have heard. Now, God's will, I had a little trouble with, and especially people who don't believe in God. They really have trouble with it. So, I was giving a talk yesterday to about 30 people in San Carlos at a little office building by the creek. And one of the things I brought up is that we have this thing called goodwill, right? So, if I translate goodwill is really friendly, helpful, or cooperative feelings or attitude. So that makes a little bit more sense to me. The reason I say that is because if I went into a thesaurus, good and God or godly are synonymous words. So goodwill and God's will are synonymous. So that made more sense to me. Now, if I have a conception of good or God, I can go out and try to act on those things in everyday situations. Not 100% of the time. I'm a human being just like everybody else. But more times than not, I choose goodwill. And hence, my life has gotten a lot better. So, a lot of other people have trouble with this whole concept of higher power. Well, if you don't believe in God, higher power is like God, right? So I had to do a little bit of further investigation through the dictionary. So a higher power can actually be translated to a favorable ability to do something or act in a particular way. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to me. A little bit longer than I'd like it to be, but if I have to figure out what a higher power is, or if you're somebody who needs to figure out what a higher power is, that's a good translation. Again, a favorable ability to do something or act in a particular way. So well, then what's a lower power? Well, how about deceit? How about me being delusional and lying to myself? That's pretty, that's pretty low energy. I don't want to have those things. So lower power can actually be defined or translated as an inferior ability or as inefficient or as a disability. So these disabilities that I was performing through over the years, especially with, let's just go ahead and start with honesty. Since we're on the topic of honesty and money, I wasn't being honest with myself as far as getting organized, looking where my money was going, and saying to myself, okay, we got to do something about this. If you really want to live life thoroughly, you need to stop being in the state of I don't have enough, constantly picking up shifts for work, because even though the intentions were good, I was allowing outside circumstances to control my mind, and I was losing out on a lot of life. Like I said at the beginning of the program, 14 years to go out to get camping. We used to go camping like twice a year for like a 5 or 6 year period. We had great times up in Berryessa. All right. So, getting back into the whole higher power and honesty thing. Honesty is a higher power than deception, dishonesty, or fraud because it is more favorable. If I'm going to go be telling white lies, then I actually forfeit the right to be upset when I'm deceived by another human being. For instance, I was not declaring 100% of my tips for tax purposes because I believed at the time that the tax bracket I fell under was unfair. So in that case, then I basically give up my rights to complain about the amount of tips I was receiving from customers when I feel that they're not enough based on my service. So it all comes full circle. So if I'm thinking lack and I'm cheating and lying on my taxes, then I have no right to complain about people not tipping me in restaurants at the time for my service, if it didn't meet what I felt my expectations would be. So many times I mentioned feeling slighted or being charged extra for iced coffee at our local Pete's or Starbucks. And so what I would do is I'd pay the price one day, and then the next day I'd come in with the same cup, not tell them it was from the day before, and pay the refill price, because I was justifying that it was more reasonable to pay $3.95 for 2 days worth of coffee as opposed to $3.45 on a daily basis. So furthermore, I was aligning myself with the thoughts of scarcity, and then they weren't aligned with abundance when it comes to finances, thus attracting things such as, higher interest rates, court fees, county fines, higher taxes, overdraft fees, penalties, and so on. All these things were coming in my life over and over and over again. Some silly notice that I owe somebody something, I felt it wasn't justified. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So once I made a decision in 2015 to stop doing that, I stopped getting most of these surprises. All right, so now I want to go into excuses begone. How do I change my thinking of getting out of this? I don't have enough, this lack, this fear, me constantly having to hustle for more money and letting money control my life and not looking at, you do actually have enough money, you're just not balancing it out well. So on Excuses Begone, page 169, Dr. Wayne Dyer says this. He says, there's no solution for scarcity-focused thought processes. Rather, you have to outgrow this kind of immature thinking by reminding yourself that it makes much more sense to assert that you're prosperous instead of focusing on, I can't afford it. Attract the universal guidance that will help rather than the kind that hinders. Right here, right now, state, I can never be absolutely certain that the financing I need or desire is not on its way. Thus, the belief I can't afford it is false, and I refuse to let myself use the excuse. So when I brought this to my attention, I started making better choices with my money. Also, the right funds became available for me. Whatever seemed expensive at the time, whether it was new shoes or going out to a ball game or going away for a weekend with maybe a girl I was dating or something. So all these things started happening for me when I was honest with myself and saying, okay, you're out of focus. You're just making brash decisions with your money. You're impulsively paying bills too quickly. There are minimum amounts you can pay. You don't have to pay triple the amount that you owe, even though your intentions are good, but your life is out of focus and you're not enjoying yourself. I'm sorry if this sounds repetitive, but this is a show where it's not rehearsed, it's all ad lib, and I'm just giving you what I got. So anyway, you want something like that? Go pay for one of these channels. Just kidding. All right. And more of what I wanted to start happening then started happening. So I stopped being deceptive with myself. I took some time to evaluate what was really happening, and I was being dishonest with my spending habits and with my earnings, and less of what I wanted was coming, while more pain and lack was arriving in my mind. So now I get to go places and have experiences because I have this greater understanding of myself. But I can't express it enough. If you put your focus on seeking the answers, I believe, based on my experience, it will happen for you too. Many of you know I was a straight fool over the years. Some might say a nice guy, but man, what is he thinking sometimes? So I got a little better focus, but I had to do some research, take some suggestions from some authors, some spiritual giants, and now I get to come out to Aptos in the middle of the week on Halloween night. We're going to do some s'mores, get some burgers going, maybe take a little walk over here by the beach. I've never been camping over here on the coast. I don't know about any of you, but I intend on having a good time. See? Rather than spending money on a Halloween costume, I just put money towards gas and food and propane. And now I got all this nature out here, and there's barely any souls out here in this campground. So, yeah. What did Ice Cube say in 96? The world is mine. Right now it feels like that. But, yeah, anyway. I hope you've taken something from this segment, and maybe take some time to pick up this book by Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's great stuff in there as far as making excuses for our thinking, justifying our behaviors, and there's a lot of solutions in there. And I can't say enough about the Sermon on the Mount. This is a must-read if you're looking for a spiritual experience. We cannot grow spiritually unless our conduct is in order. Fear is not a good conduct. It is a lower power. So in the next coming weeks, I'm going to go through a few more of these higher powers that seem to be working better for me when I apply them after I identify what the lower powers or the disabilities in my mind are. And maybe you can identify and relate and apply it to your life too. And in the meantime, we can have a few laughs over some of my goofy mistakes over the years. And, feel free to share some of yours with me too. Send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or what have you, if you'd like. Anyway, happy Halloween. Be safe. Get home early, and let's do this again next week. So for now, I'm Dan Banchero, and here's to feeling good all the time.